my days are, I don't know, it's way happier waking up to work on your game than to wake up to a page that, you know, database systems have gone down and the company is losing $1 million a minute if you don't get your ass up and fix it.
We are here once again talking to another wonderful indie dev. I'm talking to the man behind BeefArena. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing today, John?
You know, I am tired, but that's pretty much the usual state for me. So we spoke back at Portland Retro Gaming Expo 2024. And at that time, you had a build for BeefArena at the show. And I got a chance to play it there, and honestly, I had a blast with it as it was. But you've since released a demo on Steam, and going back and playing that demo, I've noticed that there's quite an improvement between the two versions. How has development been going for you over these last few months?
I think it's been going pretty good. It's actually, I think that there's a lot in the game that's there now that wasn't. Like, I didn't necessarily, you know, looking back at where I was in September, I didn't necessarily expect to go in the direction that I ended up going. So I think back in September, you know, I kind of had the basic prototype figured out. I had some levels going where it was like, okay, you know, kill a certain number of cows or whatever. And it was really just kind of the basic. It was like a basic weapon set and the basic movement. And I think since then, you know, I got a lot of feedback from Portland RetroCon, and you know, a lot of things that people said to me while playing the game at the con really kind of resonated, and I went back and added a bit to the game. So like, you know, in September, there was no co-op, so today you can do local co-op. That has become a bigger part of the game, and also there was sort of a fork in the road where I was saying, hey, you know, I can either I was thinking about kind of going with more of a scrolling direction where, you know, maybe you were scrolling up while you were moving through these levels, or, you know, the co-op thing. And so the co-op thing kind of fit what I had. And I think ultimately, you know, when you look back at the games, it's inspired by the Bubble Bobbles, the Snow Brothers, you know, all of these games were co-op originally. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to draw from, but also trying to, you know, kind of move into someplace new. So, you know, thinking about, you know, where do I move into new? I'm looking at newer games like, say, you know, Dead Cells or Windblown or, you know, Enter the Gungeon for like kind of newer inspiration for like, how can I mix these two things together and kind of, so I think that today's game, is a much more modern game than what I was showing back in September. But I think it's a better game for it. I don't think anybody's going to complain. I think that ultimately the flow of gameplay, the tempo of gameplay is going to feel the same. It's still, you know, a 2-button arcade game. It's still pretty simplistic in its mechanics and mostly focused on, you know, what you see on the screen.
So I'm kind of curious where, like back in September, where you expected it to be going. Like what does that game look like versus today?
I think the game that I had envisioned in September was a little bit more of a, you know, traditional, hey, let's pump through 80 single screen levels of, you know, whatever. And I think that the idea was, you know, you'd get weapons and some power-ups along the way. I think there was kind of, I had a moment, I think, around, you know, after getting the feedback in at the con, and then kind of taking a step back and looking, you know, what's out there right now, because you know, I'd kind of been stuck in development for like a year at that point, and I think I needed to kind of like poke my head up and take a look around and say, like, what do I have, and like what are people making, what are people asking for, in terms of like, you know, what's kind of the bread and butter and what's table stakes for a game to succeed on Steam?
Being a solo dev can sometimes be probably like the most challenging thing that you can do in game development, because you have to balance every aspect of the project. What has been the most difficult part for you? Like, has it been graphics? Has it been music? Like, what is the part that you have kind of, I don't want to say struggle, but has been the biggest obstacle for you?
I think it's actually marketing. It's kind of the promotional side of things. It's, you know, getting things out there. I think that's kind of a boring answer. I think that's the cliche answer, but I think that's kind of the truth. I think putting, getting the Steam capsule put together and putting, putting together like blue sky posts and stuff and trying to kind of put something out there that's visually appealing. And you realize that like, somebody can spend just as much time, full-time job, 60 hours a week, trying to game social media or whatever and promote something. And, at some point I'm like, well, I'm going to do a little bit, but, ultimately, like, they say like 90% of marketing in a video game is the product itself. So really I'm trying to put most of my, so I've got the marketing thing in the background and you're trying to build an audience. I've got that going on in the back of my head, but really I'm just trying to get to that point where I'm like, I'm confident and I say, hey, I've got like a complete experience here. Because I'll be honest, like with the demo, the demo as it exists right now is a little bit rushed. I needed to get it out there in order to participate in next Steam Fest, which is like 2 weeks away or something. So by the time Steam Fest starts, there's going to be a few more actual additions to the demo. So this has been like, I guess like, and this ties in with that promotional thing is like making these timelines, getting into Steam on time and saying, okay, I've got to plan like 3 months ahead and I've got to get this demo out there and I got to do this and that. Well, I got the demo out there, but it's not exactly up to where I wanted it to be. And so like, I've still got like 2 weeks left before this thing goes. And there's actually going to be like a whole nother layer where it's like right now the game's got a really 1942 feel to it where, you kind of like enter the game and you sort of get these power ups and you don't really have much choice. You kind of just get what the game gives you. And, the choice you have is like looking at your items and saying, this item is going to work better with this weapon versus this weapon. But I want to get the game more to a place where you're curating your items and saying like, after you beat a boss, there's like a stage where it says, okay, do you want to buy more items with what you got? Or can you want to trade items? You want to trade up or, and make those kinds of decisions. So those decisions aren't really in the demo right now. And I want to get those in there. So there's this balance between, showing the game I want to show and then this promotional thing and kind of striking the balance between that. I think that's for me, the biggest challenge.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, I'm kind of curious to talk to you about like your own game development journey. Where did you actually get started with game development? Like, what was the first thing that you learned? How'd you get into it?
The first thing I learned, this is going to reveal my age a little bit here, but the first thing I learned was I used to copy programs out of a 321 Contact magazine into an IBM PC. And this is probably, we're talking 1986, 1987. That was my first exposure to game development and like, what it took to make a game and what goes on under the hood.
When did you actually make the jump into making your own things? Like, what was your first game project?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a like BeefArena for sure is my first kind of commercial game project. This is the furthest I've taken any game. So in a sense, it's my first project. In another sense, it's probably like my 20th project. So going back over the years, I used to just kind of make games for fun and then worked at GameStop for several years. I was a store manager of a GameStop up here. Did that for like 8 years. And then kind of while I was going to college and then I finished up college. I did computer science. So it's a lot of programming and all of that. And games, of course, they're a great little stage to like play with new ideas and learn new programming languages and all that stuff, new technologies. So games have been like a really natural thing for my programming career. So then, after college, I actually spent like 10 years working in like software engineering, doing like a lot of network engineering stuff and a lot of like kind of back end, software as a service type stuff. So I spent a while working there. And then I think that this games thing has just been going on in the background that whole time. So I've got all these prototypes, sitting on hard drives and all sorts of little weekend projects. I think like BeefArena, this was like, I made it. I think the first version was like 2018 or something. I made it and, showed it to a few people at work. And I think like, of course I left that job and took another job. And then, the whole journey is very convoluted, but basically I got to a point where I had the opportunity. I've got a somewhat stable, safe career to go back to if I need to panic or, whatever. But this making games, this is really where I have the most fun. This is, my days are, I don't know. It's way happier waking up to work on your game than to wake up to a page that, database systems have gone down and the company is losing $1 million a minute if you don't get your ass up and fix it.
What does the future of BeefArena look like to you? Like, not just, what does the rest of development look like, but what does it look like after release to you?
Yeah, sure. So I think realistically, like, I think we released somewhere like in July, sometime this summer. I don't want to commit to a date, but I do want to say, like, I've got a place where I'm like, we're going to have enough biomes in there. We're going to have enough items. We're going to have enough arenas. There's going to be enough content here that justifies, like, here, this is like, it's not shovelware, whatever. Right. So from there though, I do expect, I think I've got another game that I'm working on, and I've even already started the documents for that one. That's going to be a little bit more serious and a little bit more. It's going to take a little bit more care, I think, than BeefArena. BeefArena is kind of like a sort of like in your face, explosive sort of game, and so I'm not managing a lot of subtlety in BeefArena, for example, right? So, and I think. So anyway, I digress. We released sometime this summer, and I think about 2-3 months after that, there's probably an extra biome and some extra features that come out, completely for free as an update. And this is going to be based off, whatever comes in that first set of Steam reviews, whatever comes from people's feedback. If nobody buys the game and I'm still just making this thing myself, 3 months down the line, I'm going to pick up the project again and I'm going to say, all right, looking at it again, now that I haven't looked at it. Now, I hope this isn't the case, but I'm still going to, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, all right, what do I wish I had on release day? And I'm going to put some of that in there. Otherwise that's, optimistic me hopes that there's going to be a bunch of people get on Discord and say, hey, I love the game, but I'm running into this bug. Hey, I love the game, but we think it would be cool if you added this. Then, hopefully, if people are responding and I'm getting feedback from the game, then I'll incorporate that into the game. So there's the release, and then there's this maintenance that goes on. Because this game, it's going to be up on Steam forever, regardless of whatever. So then I've got another game in the works, and then and then hopefully over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, this builds up, into something that can, something that can sustain me.
I'm intrigued, you talking about a potential next game, something that apparently is more serious than killing alien cows. I don't know how you can get more serious than that. That is terrifying to me. But are you ready to say anything about what this next game might be? Not really. I think it's definitely like going to be like a side scroller. It's definitely going to utilize a lot of the technology, a lot of the systems that I built for BeefArena. So you'll see a lot of weapons. I think though that whereas BeefArena, the focus is entirely on the combat. The focus is entirely on these. It's either BeefArena is ultimately going to come down to kind of like you're going to be doing these endurance fights where you're getting faster and faster cows until you just can't handle it anymore. You're going to be dealing with more and more bullets, and there's going to be a whole bunch of boss fights and, a bunch of secrets to find. But not so much. It's all action though. It's all kind of guided. There's not any focus on like exploration. I don't have, there's no like colored key puzzles. There's nothing that's like, nothing, you're not really working your brain that hard. As you're chugging through here, you learn a few things. You learn what items are good. You learn what weapons you have fun with. But you're not making huge tactical decisions. You'll get a few decisions to make in BeefArena, but it's going to be mostly on rails with this sort of randomness added in. Whereas the new game, I think, is going to be a little bit more directed. I'm taking a lot of inspiration from the Super Metroid map rando
mod. I don't know if you've heard of this ROM hack. It's really popular on, So I'm taking a lot of inspiration from that. I've been watching speedrunners go through that and say like, because Super Metroid has always been a game that it's top 3 for me for sure. And it's like, what makes this game tick? And I think like what map randos have done have really like added a ton to the game. So I want to incorporate some of that into this new game, but I want there to be more focus on exploration. So it's something where you're going to have some action scenes. You're going to have some of this stuff is going to even feel familiar if you played BeefArena. But I do think the tempo of the game is going to be slower, and it's going to be based more on exploration. And I think that there's going to be a little bit more subtlety to the mood. It's not going to be quite so in your face all the time. So we'll see. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm probably I'm 3 months into conceiving this game right now, and I do have a lot of documents written, but it's not we're so early that anything could change.
I will say that playing the demo for BeefArena, my brain immediately went to like Mega Man. I was like, I feel like a lot of the gameplay systems in the demo as they sit, I'm like, you could just get rid of the cows and suddenly this turns into a Mega Man platformer pretty easily. So I'd definitely be curious to see how close the two games feel once you get more into the development of the next one.
Well, and it's even, and I don't know if you've seen on the Discord, I just added a Metal Blade to BeefArena. So it's just like it's the Mega Man 2, Mega Man 2 is a huge piece of inspiration for me all around. I've got prototypes of it. I haven't shown it off lately, but there's some later levels where there's more platforming stuff. So there is going to be like this disappearing blocks kind of stuff. Some of the same kind of stuff that you got in Mega Man games. Some of that stuff is going to show up in some of the later levels in BeefArena. And honestly, when I think about like what BeefArena is, I think what it started out was like, I want to recreate Snow Brothers, but in like a way more explosive way. And I think that where it is now, I think is a little bit more like Mega Man meets Binding of Isaac.
That's a hell of an elevator pitch just right there. So I've got one last question for you, and I wanted to leave us on kind of a fun one. BeefArena's got a ton of different weapons and things that the player is going to be able to use to eviscerate hordes of bovine monstrosities. What is your favorite weapon personally?
Oh man, my favorite weapon, it changes a lot because, I'll be working on a weapon and I will make the weapon my favorite while I'm working on it. Let's see. So the last thing I worked on was the Metal Blade. I don't know that that's my favorite weapon right now. I think my favorite weapon is probably the railgun. I have a lot of fun. I don't know. The railgun feels really good to me, and I have a lot of fun, killing like, lines of cows, like getting like 10 or 12 cows, like all at the same time.
Anyways, with that, that's all that we have. Thank you so much for talking to me once again. If people were looking to follow you on the internet somewhere, where could they find you?
Blue Sky, which I think the links are on the Steam page, so you can always Google BeefArena Steam. I'm on Blue Sky, and my username, which you get on, it's Zinkem, Zinkem, which I think is actually what my developer name is in Steam. So at zinkem.bluesky.social. The Discord is, everybody is welcome in the Discord. You can lurk, you can come and chat. And there are links to both of those, I think, from the Steam page. I think there's also beefarena.com has links to these. So yeah.
And we'll have links to all that. And of course, we'll have a link to the Steam page so people can get over there and wish list it and check it out when it finally does release. Once again, thank you so much for talking to me. This has been wonderful. Hopefully I'll see you again at Portland Retro this upcoming October when that happens. Maybe. I'm gonna be attending. I'm not gonna have a booth this year, but I will be hanging out. I will be walking around, and I probably will be talking about BeefArena for sure. So hopefully, by the time the con is, which I haven't looked up the dates, but I think the game should be released by then. We should be about a month or 6 weeks into release by the time the con is. Yeah.